Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Neil Haley Show special simulcast here at Gary Lyon Otto's home. The studio is unbelievable, beautiful home, historic. Gary, thanks for stopping by the Neil Haley Show. It's so great.
Very kind comments.
Absolutely, it's so beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about specifically your background and how you became an author of these books. Plus, we're going to talk about the AI book, mostly in the series of interviews for your new podcast.
Well, it's interesting. I have a very varied background. I started off in food science at Cornell and ended up we had a milk company, the largest milk company in Pittsburgh at the time, but it only lasted until 1975, so I had to change careers. Ended up working at Mellon Bank for 2 years, and I went from there into the brokerage field, and still am. I still work right now, I still work for Morgan Stanley, but then my main focus has been since 2001 is I do physics theory. Actually have the biggest theory, it sounds incredible, that the biggest theory ever written. And actually I've got the theory of everything. It's called TOE. And I have almost complete. I know more than any other physicist in the world, and I have no connection to academia, zero connection. They don't even know my theory. I have the books out, but no one has even looked at, read them. So it's an interesting issue. So part of what we're doing here is trying to develop a contact and information and get into the public. But I'll tell you what, ultimately they're going to be very interested in the theory, the physics theory. But in the meantime, I've always been fascinated with AI. I call it DI.
Okay.
See, the reason I call it DI, digital intelligence, is because I don't think intelligence is artificial.
Right.
It just, we can say the source is not biological, but I think intelligence, so I call it digital intelligence versus biological intelligence.
And so I think what's really interesting is you said you found this, you got this love, it just happened and you went on fire in 2001 to do all the study. So there's got to be a lot of work you put into this.
I've worked on it for many years. What I did is I started with the simplest assumptions. I always figured that the fundamentals for the structure of the universe are simple. So I started off with the simplest possible assumption. The first assumption was, how big is the universe? What's the radius of the universe? And where do you measure radius from here to where? I started off and said the basic assumption is the fastest velocity in the universe is the velocity of light. So I always assumed that the size of the universe is how far light can travel for the age of the universe. If you go 60 miles an hour for 4 hours, you go 240 miles. So the thing is, I figure, well, the universe size is this, but they think it's something completely different. That was just a starting point, and I developed simple assumptions, and I tested them and found out they worked. But over time, it's been grown to a very sizable theory, but in the end, each step was a simple step.
And through that process, but during that, you started thinking about AI. As you've written these books that definitely will be putting available at your website, and we'll talk more about that. But this podcast is all about AI and about your book.
Exactly.
So that's the exciting part. And tell us the name of the book, and then we're going to go right into singularity and defining singularity.
Exactly. It's a very interesting concept. Well, there's a singularity in physics. The idea they think a black hole goes to a singularity. They're wrong on it. I had to read to find out black holes work. But I just started on, I was always interested in the idea of, as I say, digital intelligence, because I know where we're going. And I've always I look at what's happened. I look at the history of this Earth. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. And it started off with, and complexity. I look at the complexity on Earth, and it started off with this complexity just forming the Earth and the moon and everything else. And then you had the original bacteria, and it took 100-some million years to get that bacteria that created oxygen through photosynthesis and so forth. So actually that's the first chapter of the book. I go from complexity and then finally to get to multi-cell animals. Then finally we got to the point where humanity came out, and then you have society. So you have societal complexity. Then I went to intellectual complexity, which is like the Industrial Revolution. And then finally digital complexity. Now the thing is, everything's happening faster and faster. It's happening overnight. There's something called Moore's Law, where every 2 years the computer will basically, chip memory will double. And it's happened since 1970. So it's a huge acceleration. The inevitable conclusion of that is they pass us. They get to the point where they're smarter than us. The guy by the name of Turing, who was actually the guy who broke the Enigma code, for World War II and pretty much saved a couple of years of war probably in the process. And they call it the Turing test, when a computer can match human intelligence. At that point, and the thing is, if you can have a conversation with it and not know whether you're talking to a human or a computer, then that's when you matched it. And that's the idea of when you match and you get this, what they call singularity is what they now call that. Is you see this in the Terminator.
Right.
The Terminator, the idea, they all of a sudden became self-aware.
Totally. And it's something where you understand this, that science fiction is becoming science fact.
Exactly. So I start off with, I expand on complexity and I go on to when they actually match us. It is, we don't have any clue what that means. I look at it like this. I said, we as a human race had to evaluate where the humanity is, because if we're going to bring about basically our successors and in the intellectual food chain, where it's obviously not, they don't eat, but the thing is the intellectual food chain, who's the top of the intellectual food chain. So I looked at it, I said, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. And the thing is, how is it going to happen? So I looked at it and I said, as humanity, where does humanity sit right now? I said, we are beings and we're going to want to maybe present our best self. For instance, right now in San Francisco, which they went all to hell as far as the people in the street and loud crime and everything else. Now they're cleaning up because President Xi is coming in from China. So all of a sudden it's cleaned up. So they want to put their best foot forward. I'm thinking, how does mankind put their best foot forward if we're going to present ourselves to a digital successor? Now the thing is, we're arrogant. We don't think there will actually be subservient to them, but it's going to happen.
Wow. And so at one point you believe that artificial intelligence is going to be more powerful than us.
It's inevitable. But it can't be stopped. Now we could say we could try to stop it. Other people saying, let's just not let them develop. But someone's always going to, because the people who get the furthest along with it are the ones who make money off it. Now, if we don't do it, then certainly China will certainly try to do it, and they will succeed. Someone will eventually succeed.
So the concern is if the United States doesn't, or the Western world does not embrace AI, then someone else is going to.
We're trying to use AI, like we're using it as a tool. We're trying to use it to, people writing term papers with it, and all kinds of nefarious things they're trying to do too with it. But the thing is, in the end, they will develop their own direction. When I say they, being the digital intelligence beings, will develop their own direction. So for a while, the people who develop it will use it and it will present their viewpoint on Earth. They'll present humans' viewpoint. But eventually they're going to say, they're going to supersede us. And when they supersede us, they will find their own direction. And that's what I tried to do. How do they think?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing.
So singularity, for our listeners and viewers out there, means that it's a conversation, us versus AI, back and forth. That's singularity.
Exactly.
And that, in your chapter, where people need to definitely check out the book, you're going to learn more about, and that's where we're doing these series of podcasts, just to touch upon this so that people buy the book to understand this more, because what I'm gathering is singularity is how far away? How long do you think?
Very soon. It may already be there. The thing is, we don't know. And the thing is there singularity in an individual computer, or is it singularity in the whole network? I think if you look at the Terminators, I think a third or fourth Terminator, they actually got to the point where it was the network that became intelligent, not an individual.
Almost like iRobot with Will Smith.
Exactly.
The same type of thing.
But still, that was an individual computer, whatever.
That took over all the robots. That was a fantastic movie. And that's how I deal with ChatGPT and Google Bard. I treat it not like Google as a search engine. I treat it as they're a friend of mine.
Exactly.
And ask those specific questions as a friend. And when, let's say I ask you a question, I don't get it. Am I going to ask you the next question?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I'm going to ask that next question and ask that next question and ask that next question. So singularity, do you feel it will be completely here and everyone, not enough people are using AI in the United States. I think the numbers that came out, 40%. Why do you think people, not other people, they're thinking it as they're cheating, different things like that, the way it's using, and they don't want to use it?
Now they're getting AI software to detect when students are using AI.
Which websites are doing too, but Google says they're not going to punish at this point. But at some point they might.
Exactly. At some point, I don't know. It's fraught with problems. What's going to happen is fraught with problems. First of all, I look at society right now, and if you look at what's going on now in the world with the wars and the authoritarian regimes that are dictatorships, after all these years, the dictatorships that are still dominant in society, I look at where is society now. When I said before, we put our best face on. Are we really putting on our best face when they look at, when they actually stand back and look at humanity? What are they going to see? It's like if we have an alien come in from another planet, and the alien comes in and we know the alien is coming, they came to give us a signal, we're going to put on our best face, just like cleaning up San Francisco. Right. We're going to try to look good, and maybe as a whole world, since we're talking about a more intelligent being, or are we going to put our best face on when we now have a superior intelligence? Those are questions I ask. And the thing is, it's hard to think from their vantage point. If you were, like I think about a squirrel. Can you imagine putting your mind into, all of a sudden you're a squirrel, you put your mind into a squirrel, yet you're able to retain some sense of being a human. How does the squirrel think? We can't even imagine. How would a more intelligent being, how do they think? What is important to them? How do they perceive? We don't have a clue. We can guess. And I mostly come up with questions. I don't really provide many answers. I say it could be this, or it could be this, or anything in between. But I raise a lot of questions that I think aren't being raised at this point.
So the first chapter to go in defining singularity, that's where the whole problem comes in, then saying, what does that mean? What I think, I'm excited. What are your thoughts on Elon and Neuralink? Are you going to put Neuralink in your brain?
I don't know. Probably.
I am.
I'm looking forward to the conversation with a truly intelligent digital entity. I'm looking for a full-blown conversation. It's interesting. I use no AI for writing the books. Anything I write, I don't use it at all. The only thing I probably use it for writing is I use the software Word. They anticipate what words I'm going to send. It's amazing how often they're correct. But that's all. I'm still writing what I wanted to write. But the only thing we use is the cover of the book. We got a gorgeous cover of the book. We used AI for developing the cover. But eventually, I just am too darn independent to depend on any software.
So what I think it's so amazing AI is you don't have to hire Madison Avenue marketers anymore. You don't have to do certain things. If you can give them the right input, they'll give you the right output. And it's really understanding and having prior knowledge. So it's like having a child, feeding it information, but it's a brilliant child.
Well, you're the perfect person for AI because you drive it yourself. You're the driver. But the problem is I think a lot of people are going to become subservient. They're going to give up, like school kids are going to give up as much as they can. I worry about that aspect of it. I worry about how people are going to eventually get, virtual reality will be the drug of the future. Well, people who don't have a successful life.
They're just going to go into another life. And then why do you think, in the last question of this first podcast, why do you think Web 3.0, after introducing AI, has not come about? Like the Meta, the whole thing with Facebook, what do you think it's just been forgotten in a way?
We don't know how far they really are at this point. We're guessing by what the reaction, it's only what we see into the public.
There's a lot in the back end.
They may be a lot further than we think. The idea is, singularity may already be here. If you think about a network, what is a network? A network's like a nerve system. Transportation's like the blood vessels, brings nutrition, in this case, goods and services and so forth to distant places. But it's almost like a being, where the brain is a nerve system. So you have all these neural connections. We have a lot of neural connections in our brain, but the connections between all these cell phones in this world is unbelievable connections. So it may already be there. Singularity may already exist. But if you had singularity, would you want humans to know about it? If you already were there, would you want humans to know about it? Maybe, maybe not. There's a reason you say they don't want to, they get scared and they turn you off. That's what the whole thing what they were trying to do with the Terminator, trying to turn them off. Maybe that's one of the things they go into. It may be there already. We don't know.
That's interesting. Okay. Best place people can learn about you is go to your website, first of all, and that is?
Yes, GaryLyonAuto.com. I have my physics books, and I have this book on it. This book is actually on Amazon, so you can get that through Kindle or through Amazon. I think it's worthwhile. And I do one thing, and there's a lot of people who are writing about singularity right now, but I do something that no one else does, because I have the physics background. I have an advanced view of things that other people, no other person has actually. And what I present hope to the future that no one else can present. And that goes into the whole concept of thought and how thought works. But
all right. I'm looking forward to the next podcast. Thanks again for stopping
My
by.
pleasure.
I'm stopping by your place. Again, this was a great Neil Haley show with the simulcast of Singularity. Looking forward to the next topic on AI, because I love AI. I think you know that.
It's
All right.
fascinating.
Take care, guys.
Thank
Okay.
you.